Hi, I'm David Kelly, and I'm here to talk about a textbook fail and how I finessed that lesson. This is a lesson I did with Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Started with the question, how can you teach Hamlet to middle school students and actually have them understand what it means? Well, we start with the learning target of read Hamlet and tell me what it means, which was a complete fail. Here's why. It's a seventh grade drama class. Now, this class often works above grade level and across all subjects generally has above grade level work. It also has above grade level reading. It's a fairly advanced school. In fact, because it's so advanced, I thought, let's make the first project of the year to produce Hamlet. However, I had no real understanding of student ability at this point. Even advanced students struggle with Shakespeare. Professional actors will study it for years and years before trying to attempt playing apart from Hamlet. And my understanding of the previous learning was poor. They do read Shakespeare in 6th grade English, but for them to just be able to spout out an understanding of a text doesn't really work out. Because Hamlet has old language without any learning supports, and it's completely different from any previous play they've read before. There's too much text and too little time to actually dig through it. In fact, if you read the full text, the first folio of Hamlet, 4.5 hours would be the full performance length. It's dense and unapproachable language. It often leaves the reader, and sometimes the audience in a bad performance, confused. Has intricate plots with esoteric meaning. Philosophers have pored over it for years and years and still don't agree on a meaning. So the students lack an attachment to the text, and they don't really have any context for the meaning of the text. And the scaffolding, just giving a text on its own, doesn't work out because the reading level isn't ready to deal with it. It's not appropriate length for the learning in the lesson or for the age group. And students don't really have any previous knowledge about the themes of Shakespeare, and therefore it's really difficult to comprehend, even for a good reader. I mean, look at this text. It's difficult to understand just looking at it. So the students lacked any sort of student involvement or student voice in the process. They weren't able to bring themselves to the text. And any literacy best practice in this lesson was absent. There were no auxiliary teaching materials or auxiliary teaching methods. There were no clear learning targets without any achievable language function. Just tell me what it means. No analysis, no interpret. And there's no appropriate lesson segment to build comprehension in the students. And the assumption was that students could get it because I could. And students just needed to try a little bit harder. And the text was interesting to anyone because it was Hamlet. It's one of the greatest works in all of time. It's been around for 400 years and it's performed nearly every day of the year somewhere on the planet. So why would the teacher need to guide any of the learning? When it came to assessing the learning, students were completely unable to reach the failed learning target. Tell me what it means. They couldn't do it. And the assessment was a fail too because there was no real evaluative criteria. Tell me what it means to you, to me. Tell me what the characters mean, what they mean in these points of the play. No criteria. Students couldn't do it. So when it came to assessment, students exhibited blank faces and made inappropriate comments about the text. This is hardly what we wanted. So how do we finesse the lesson? Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. How's this learning target? I can interpret the text of to be or not to be. That's just a section of Hamlet. Through images, personal translation, and performances of the text. Well, let's see how this works out. Well, let's link it to a standard, the Common Core Literacy Standards of determining meaning of words and phrases as they're used in a text. And we can link it to a central focus of some lessons, several lessons in fact, of to be or not to be by using expressive gestural images of actors. And then we have the learning target of interpreting Hamlet's question, to be or not to be. So we look at one portion of the text at a time, to be or not to be. That's the first essential instructional change, making the text manageable for the age group. 2, we share the demand of interpreting with the entire class by having different groups translate and interpret different segments of the text. This is called a jigsaw approach. We take it apart and we put it back together at the end of the lesson. Here are some samples of what groups actually worked with. And then we front load the images to the students, so they're primed with the ideas before they even read. By looking at images, the reader actually can picture what's going on in the text as they read it and add to their personal connection. Some of the images that we used were here. Actual images of performers doing this text and this part of Hamlet. Look at these images and imagine, what gesture, what emotion do you see? What moment would follow? What moment would come before? So one of the essential instructional changes here is that we wanted a personal meaning to be a part of the instruction, and in the approach to the text so that students can create personal attachment to their piece of the text. And when we have a lesson map here, we look at front-loading with images so that students can connect. We assess the understanding of those images, the gestures and the emotions inside of those images, and we practice responding to something that is completely accessible. Then we look at a jigsaw of the text, a very manageable portion of it, just a tiny bite-sized bit. We assess that interpretation by sharing out the translation, and then with extended learning we actually perform our translations and the original text. Now, part of this translation means actually responding to the text with an image. That's part of your translation. So the process gets brought full circle from an image of a performer to the text itself, to a translation made by the student, to an image made by the student in response to the text, and then a performance of the text itself. Here is evidence of the student learning. Here we have to be or not to be. That is the question. Translated as, are we real or are we not? I don't know. That is why I'm talking to myself. Or, 'tis a consummation. Devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. Consuming is only to be wished. To die, to sleep, hoping to dream, that is what you want. Or, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache of 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. Translation, stay alive and end disagreements, though thousands die, we must stay alive. Or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. Translating as, go against troubles, and by fighting, end them. And you can really see the student connection here with the image and their student voice coming through as they talk about their own troubles. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, translated as, whether it is better in my mind to suffer the slingshots and bullets of dumb luck. And here, for in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. What dreams we have after death, when our life was ended, must pause the pain in life. And without knowing it, what's really interesting about this work here is that the student is looking or thinking about poison. And that is exactly how Hamlet ends, with poison. So what do we learn? Teachers should know and not over or underestimate student ability. Teachers should use a clear and achievable learning target that connects to their text and their language function, for example, to interpret. Teachers can jigsaw a complicated or dense text to make achievable segments so that students can learn in achievable, measurable amounts. Teachers should use multiple modalities to address literacy: images, drawing, collaborative learning, there's a constructivist approach, and peer group learning, which is a socio-cultural approach. So you're actually building knowledge together and discussing your knowledge with other people. You get to check understanding and develop understanding through these two approaches. But also by using images and drawing, you are accessing a part of literacy that exists beyond words. Thanks for watching.